A number of you have told me that as you deal with addictions, whether to alcohol or drugs or anything that seems to compellingly force you beyond the focus that you'd like to have in your daily life, and where you end up in an activity that you know overall is destructive for you, that is life-defeating in some way rather than life-enhancing. Many of you have told me that you wished you had a way to break the loop, and that is actually pretty close to what actually happens in addictive personalities and addictive brain chemistry. We are actually getting into a very compelling neurological loop that may have begun because of our genetic heritage, or it may be that during your early life or even adolescence you were subject to some trauma or even to abuse, and this overdevelopment of a neurological pathway or hyperstimulation created a very high intensity pathway that's sometimes called a pleasure loop, but it certainly doesn't always come from pleasure. And once we activate the neurons that start this process rolling, it's very, very hard to break away and do a behavior other than our addictive behavior. It oftentimes becomes a situation where we're covering up pain or suffering or struggle, or it's something we do when we need some downtime or escape from life. There can be a number of reasons why we are so subject to the compelling nature of addictions, and most people have some addictive behaviors, and for many it doesn't cause them much trouble. But for those of you whose lives are ruled by addictions, and sometimes to the point of almost killing you or causing you to lose others in your life or your job, important relationships, then I know it is a very difficult situation and you've got to get a handle on it. Sometimes just interrupting that loop and stopping that behavior. For some, it can be a matter of taking some deep breaths or going for a walk or calling a friend. One of the reasons that I'm putting this video on Just Us Friends is that I hope it will be helpful to come to your computer and click on this video and let this be a reminder that interrupts that addictive process. And so if you are listening here now to this video and you are trying to not succumb to whatever your addictive behavior is, let's start by taking those 3 or 4 deep breaths. And breathe in and breathe out and relax. And do this 3 or 4 times. And remember as you're doing it the consequences of this behavior. Look at this afternoon or this evening or tomorrow morning or a week from now. If you succumb to these addictive pressures, what will the consequences be? Are you going to feel sick? Are you going to be unconscious? What are the very worst consequences? Are you going to lose your relationship or your job? Or are people that love you going to lose respect for you? Consider the consequences. And now consider the options that are alternatives, that are healthy for you, that will help you, that will move that neurological energy in your brain to a different part of your brain. So you will be charging those neurons, increasing blood flow, stimulating other parts of your body and your intellect, and maybe even your spiritual self. So what are some other options? You might go meditate for a while. You might go for a walk. You might go listen to some music, or better yet, play some music. If you play an instrument or a guitar, that's a great way to break this cycle and stimulate your brain in other ways. You might even go take a nap. Think of the things that in some way are soothing and relaxing for you. Now, another aspect of this is getting in touch with where did this addiction come from. Take some time, as we've talked about in other videos, to go back and look at any trauma or distress, the etiology of where this addiction may have come from for you. And look at the triggers that stimulate this behavior and bring it to the foreground where it becomes so compelling. Think of how you must avoid those triggers. And what do you really need deep down instead of the addictive behavior? What do you really need to soothe you, to bring you into balance, to give you the emotional nurturing and the true support that you need beyond this addiction? If every time you get stuck, you remember that we're here, this video is here, you can come back and listen again and change your behavior little by little.